common denominator with all of these 10 people groups that he distinguishes there. We call them today, we just lump them all in as Arabs. Now, the Egyptians are like a purebred German shepherd. And the Arabs are, now listen, I don't have a better illustration than using dogs. And for those of you who love dogs and have dogs and your dogs have become your own kids, God bless you, okay? I can't identify with you, so I'm just going to use dogs as an illustration. But when you have mixed breeds, you have what we call a mutt. So, am I calling Arabs mutts? Well, yes, I guess so. Because, see, they're a mixed breed of all of the Hittites and Jebusites and Moabites and Ammonites and Amalekites and flashlights and termites, and we're just going to call them ites. But see, what we've done is we've lumped them all in together, and we've just generically, collectively called them Arabs. And if you do that in Psalm 83, you're going to get confused. So can you just indulge me as I take you through Psalm 83, and we're going to look at all of these different people groups listed by their ancient names, and their sole goal is to destroy the nation of Israel so that her name is remembered no more. Now, it's important to understand, as we'll see next, that every single one of them that are listed here in Psalm 83 either border Israel, are in Israel, or are close in proximity to Israel. Let's look at the first one. We find it in verse 6, and we start off the list with the tents of Edom. Who are the tents of Edom? Well, these are the Edomites. Who are the Edomites? Edom is another name for Esau. Remember Esau? He's the fraternal twin brother of Jacob. He is the father of the modern day Edomites who have taken the name of the Palestinians but are really what we would consider to be, in part, not whole, modern day Jordanians. I think it's interesting. And for those of you who went to Israel with us back in 2008 and then again in 2010 last year, you remember when we were in the bus and we were driving by and we would see these Bedouins, the nomads, in their tents? It's kind of interesting because every once in a while you'd see this tent and then right next to it was a Mercedes. Weird. Those are Edomites. Those are the tents of Edomites. They are a Bedouin people. They are a nomadic people. They are an Arab people, and that's who they are. And you will find them predominantly in Jordan. And really, you might remember this last trip when we were driving along the Israel-Jordan border. Remember the security fence? And on the other side, I mean, it's a spectacular, breathtaking view. But and especially when you got into Israel proper, and you would see even, like close to Bethlehem, you would see the tents of Edom. Those are Edomites, and they are mentioned here as the first ones in verse 6. Now, after the tents of Edom, we have listed in verse 6 the Ishmaelites. Now, the Ishmaelites are primarily Arabs, descendants of Ishmael, who, remember Ishmael, he was the half-brother of Isaac. He was born to Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant that Sarah, in her impatience, had Abraham she gave birth to Ishmael about 10 years before Isaac was born. And he is the father of the Ishmaelites, and so these are the descendants of Ishmael, and they would make up primarily what we would know today as the area of modern-day Egypt. Now, some believe that you would even spill over into modern-day Saudi Arabia, which is the Arabian Peninsula. But if you look on this map, you have Egypt here and Saudi Arabia here, and you will find the Ishmaelites there. This is speaking of Egypt. Now, the next one we have is Moab. These are the Moabites, whom we today also refer to as the Palestinians. However, they are yet again another people group known as the modern-day Jordanians. So Edomites, Moabites are Jordan. The next one in verse 6 are the Hagrites. Now, pay close attention to this because there's a distinction between the Hagrites and the Ishmaelites. Now, some of your translations might say the Hagrians, and some have debated this and really questioned this and not identified this as being Egypt, but it is. These are the descendants of Hagar, Hagrites. Now, listen, there's a distinction between the Hagrites and the Ishmaelites. While both are modern-day Egyptians, Ishmael would go on to have many descendants, as would Hagar have many more children other than Ishmael from other than Father Abraham, and they are Hagrites, but not Ishmaelites. I hope that. Some of you are looking at me going, ha! Can we just simplify it this way and say that the Hagrites and the Ishmaelites are Egypt? And they're listed here in Psalm 83 vis-a-vis Hagar and Ishmael. In verse 7, we have listed Gibal. Now, this is the area we know today as, again, by the way, when I say in part, that's because the map that the psalmist was looking at, well, let's put it this way. Asaph did not have Google Earth. Right? The ancient boundaries of these countries, of these nations, of these people groups was very different and encompassed a very different area, in some cases a much larger area than the days in our day. See, it's hard, especially when you get into prophecies like Isaiah and Psalm 83 and even Ezekiel 38 and Zechariah 12, and you have all these ancient names listed, and you go to a modern day map, you've got to really sort of erase the boundaries and superimpose a template of these ancient borders in order to better understand what the prophecy is about and for whom this prophecy is about. But this is modern day Lebanon, chiefly the northern part of Lebanon, which, by the way, borders Syria. So that's who in verse 7 Gibal is. Now we have Ammon. These are the Ammonites, and again, they're Jordanians, but they refer to